so many people don't want to bet on themselves?
Quite frankly, I'm competitive. I want to be better than everybody else.
Have you heard of this whole region beta paradox?
I do business very emotionally.
Because what I know about every business is that on day one, all you had was questions and no answers.
Empathy is, I think, what makes me successful in what I do.
Are there elements of entrepreneurship that you don't like?
Every day, entrepreneurship is great, but it's lonely.
Look what we've accomplished so far instead of looking at all the stuff you don't have.
It was a slap in the face, the reality hit.
Welcome back to the Roll with Steve podcast. I've got Chris Wascak here with me. He's the co-founder of HTD Talent, revolutionizing the staffing industry with a new age talent creation model that's taken steam over the last decade or so. What I find interesting about your story is that you've been in this industry for 10 years, but prior to that, you have this entrepreneurial thread that started. Then you go into an industry as a sales guy where you worked it, you learned it, and then the entrepreneurship came out again, and you ended up starting your own in this space. But I want to go back to the motivation because a lot of people that listen to this are thinking through, they'd like to do something entrepreneurially. They want to take that leap. And there's this concept of maybe things aren't bad enough for them yet. The region beta paradox, people keep talking about, I keep seeing reels on that. Your story is interesting because the thing that really woke you up inside the industry was a $15,000 bonus payment that first got you thinking, maybe having this job isn't for me. Tell me what happened with that payment as a way of intro.
To be very clear, I think it was $17,000. So
okay.
Way different than the 15.
Not to parse that last 2,000. Okay.
At that point in my life, that $2K, that was already planned on in the bank because I thought that was coming to us.
Yeah.
But yet I look back on that, and at the time, it was something that, to me, I felt a little spited, right? It was something that myself, the team worked hard for to achieve to help the company earn. We were told that would come in the form of payment, and it never happened.
And just like based off like a revenue target for the company?
Yeah, commission, people hitting their commission, and then the whole sales team hitting a certain goal, which we did. So we felt, that was pretty much a done deal, and it never happened. But I always point to that as an inflection point in my career because at the time I thought, man, I needed that $17,000. I planned for that $17,000. If I had that $17,000, nothing would have changed, right? I would have stayed there. I'd have been happy. I'd have been, you set a goal, you reach it, you get paid, and I would have been comfortable. And I think that was the first thing that got me truly uncomfortable with kind of how the business works or how that works. And that led me to take outside opportunities, right, to go to one of the competitors afterwards to help build and scale their program. They went on to sell to a Fortune 1000 company afterwards. And then I saw kind of that $17,000 that I didn't get really was the reason that I started to get so motivated to then eventually do it ourselves.
Did you feel that at the time? Like the moment you found out you weren't going to get this $17,000 bonus payment, did you feel like I'm ready to quit this job? Or is that when you started looking for new opportunities? Did you know it was an inflection point?
I'd been getting reached out to before to join another company, but it was something that I wasn't ready to take because I was comfortable. I like the people I work with. One of them, your twin brother, who we're now starting this business with. So really cool story there that we can get into. But yeah, I had no clue that was such a big point in my life. And I didn't know that was like, oh, here's the deal. I'm going to go run and take that job. Yeah. It was just something that I knew, man, $17,000 to me right now is the end of the world. Yeah. Like it is the biggest thing I've ever achieved in my entire life. And I thought that was the pinnacle until I started to see success in the next job that I took and then think, wow, I can eventually be one of those business owners that like can make it. And that's kind of the...
Then you're the one not paying the $17,000.
Yeah. But
you wouldn't do that to somebody.
But as a leader, right, as kind of a manager and a leader of a company, I still take the things I've learned from that and the experiences and put myself into people's situation that work for me or are along for the ride to help build our career or our company journey. So
that empathy is so important to have. And I want to hit that a little bit later with you, and another story that brings out the empathy of you having been there and felt that and know how it feels to your employees when things are coming down, they're detrimental. But Walk me through that moment. I want to dive in deep to this, like such a pivotal part of your career. What does this look like? So there's probably so many people out there who have been shysted by an employer that's made a promise to them, and then you go out and you achieve it, and then the employer says no based on a technicality, or they just decide not to do it. How were you guys notified by the company that you weren't going to get this bonus payment? Like, where were you when you found this out?
The memory is pretty hazy, so I can't remember. I didn't ingrain so far that I can tell you exactly where, what, when, and why. It was never on paper in the commission structure, so it was something we just knew that, hey, if you hit this will be taken care of. But I think it was just mentioned in passing, like, hey, commission checks are coming out. We see this, just remember, and we brought it up to our manager, and then like, yeah, okay, well, I'll go run that by whoever. And then afterwards, we just got the note that was like, you're not getting it. And then kind of the three salespeople that were in line for that were like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
And it was just, it's a lesson learned. And it's not something, I don't hold any ill will now, knowing now that I'm running a business. Like, that was probably so low on the priority level for the upper management then. And we were just three low-level sales guys just trying to pinch every penny we could to try to get gas money for work, right?
Yeah.
So I don't hold ill will. It's just something that, when something happens at a real young age to you, that you can tell the story and it might not be a big deal to somebody. Like, there's just always that thing, and that was my thing at work. Yeah. It was like, you know what? I'm going to go make it myself then.
But it was a big deal to you at the time. I think that for real people who are living real existences, it doesn't matter how the employer views it. It matters how I view it, like how I'm impacted by this today as the employee,
Yeah, I mean, it could have been a vacation at that time. It could have been beer money for the next quarter. Like, I don't know what it was for at this time, but I know I needed it.
Yeah, well, that stuff matters. I think it's important. But there's a really interesting concept here. Have you heard of this whole region beta paradox?
I have not.
You know about that? Okay, so there's this idea in psychology that humans don't just make changes. Like, things have to be awful for you to make a change. And so let's say that in your case, instead of you getting spurred out of the 17K, they said to you instead, hey, we can't do 17K, but we can hit you with 15K. And you go, well, that's kind of fucked up. Like, you're missing 2,000. You promised me 2,000 more. But it's not bad enough for you to be so pissed off that you go look for something else.
Yep.
So the region beta paradox says that we only make these changes when things are terrible.
Yep.
And that there are millions and millions of people who are out there who are living in okay existences because things aren't awful. They're like, well, I don't hate my job. I just don't like it very much. But if you hate it, then it spurs. And every entrepreneur that's set up the way you are now, that has the potential to be a billionaire, frankly, one day, has a story of something that was awful that pushed them off the traditional path that most people go onto.
Yeah.
Because it was like, this is so bad, I have to hop off. Like, do you think through that of like, where would your life be today if they had given you this 17,000 where you're still like, I don't like my job that much, but hey, it pays the bills,
I'd like to think eventually I would have woken up. I just always have motivation in everything I've ever done, like with sports, with kind of everything I do, I want to be the best at. So I think eventually I would have broken out and said, I need to stop being comfortable and start being uncomfortable. But at that point, for sure, I would 100% have taken the 15K and probably said thank you and been there for the next 4 to 5 years. I would have woken up, but I would be lying to say that. I would have. Well,
the region beta paradox would argue that you would never have woken up, and that if they just kept on giving you enough where it wasn't terrible, you might still be in that career path today. Not that you're in that job, but what's the next step? Being the sales manager, being the VP in that company, and they just keep you happy. They trickle it to you instead of you coming in and seeing that there's potential for you to kind of get hit with the money fire hose, if you will,
As with all of that, I think that that's true for most. I think that there are people who don't always follow what is normal. So the region beta paradox, I think, applies to a lot of people. I don't think it applies to me because I think I intrinsically am self-motivated, where I would know there's a time to go out and try to be great and go out and do something else and be very uncomfortable. Yeah. I get stuck in ruts a lot, and then I become obsessive over certain things to try to take the next level.
Yeah. Well, I feel like most salespeople are probably in that category because salespeople are always basically running their own business inside the business anyway, owning that book of business. So they're already kind of entrepreneurially wired.
Yeah.
I do want to not breeze past the fact that before you did this job, you had a role in entrepreneurship. I want to get to that in a second. But before we do, when you quit this job and decide to go and move up in another company to basically build from scratch for them what you'd already been doing in your previous company, this idea of believing in yourself and betting on yourself, you talk about how you've had to rewire your brain to bet on yourself, to know that you have enough in you to go out and go make this happen. Walk me through your thought process on learning to bet on yourself, because so many people don't want to bet on themselves.
Yeah, it's not easy, and I didn't think I could do it at the time. I mainly, like I said, did it because I just didn't feel right being at that company anymore, and I went and took the job. I'd be lying to you if I told you that I had the belief that I could go in and do it perfectly. I kind of just said, let's take the leap of faith and bet on yourself, and then figure it out once you got there. But I've always had this like imposter syndrome that drives me in whatever I do. I know for a fact I'm still not the smartest person in most rooms I walk into. I don't have it all figured out. I rely on so many people for so many other things. But that doesn't always have to be a bad thing. Like imposter syndrome to me is something that actually helps me thrive, right? To go be better, to go do it, to do things that when people say you can't do it, right? That imposter syndrome to me is like, well, prove them wrong. And I'm not sure if it's healthy or not to have that constant chip on your shoulder, but it's always been me since I was a little kid. I was always the smallest, skinniest, person in sports, playing up a level, and I just tried to find a way forever, and it's continued in what I do in business.
All of us can associate with the imposter syndrome. I'm someone who believes that most people feel that, and especially as you move up into areas that most people aren't in, you feel an element of imposter syndrome. But you've dealt with that and used it as a strength. What can other people do that are feeling that imposter syndrome or letting that hold them back do to weaponize that into something positive for them?
That's a really good question. I think it is belief in the areas where you are in your zone of genius, right? For so many parts of this business, I still have this imposter syndrome when I walk into a room with investors or finance people, but I rely on what I do well and what I know I can do better than anybody you put in front of me. And that's kind of building relationships, finding people's pain points, solving their pain points, being in that sales kind of leadership role. That's what I'm good at. And I feel the confidence. I thrive on that, knowing that, listen, I don't know 90% of what you can do, but you can't do anything what I can do. And I think it's not to make them feel lesser. It's just that's what I can drive on in my core to say, this is why I belong. And I am an expert when it comes to this certain area. Yeah. And if you can find that in something that you do, that's where you hold tight and bet on yourself. You can always get better in other areas. You can always continue learning, but take your area of strength and make that the strongest it can be and full-heartedly believe, in that area that you know how to do.
Yeah. I think people need someone to help them to feel that level of confidence in the thing that they're really good at. Because on top of the imposter syndrome, people deal with this self-doubt of how good their skill set is when it comes to these various things. And from being an entrepreneur and taking the leap and leaving multiple companies behind that would have given you a safe place to play and do what you're doing today, where you maybe owned 1% of it or 2% of it, 3% of it, instead of having the chance to say, no, I'm going to go build this for myself. And this idea you talked about before when you left the first company of, I will figure out how to do this from scratch. Take a leap of faith, bet on ourselves to build all of that. Like most people don't have the willingness to say, I'll have to figure it out attitude. Yeah. And we'll just take it one step at a time. They want to think through the entire thing first, which gives them a lot of reasons not to do it, right?
I think most people need to draw motivation from other things or other people. And that's just not how I'm wired. I've never been wired that way. Like I find it really cheesy sometimes when people really try to rah and fire up a bunch of teams and get them to like care as much as you do. Yeah. And that to me, it's kind of cringy when I see it. It's like the people who are successful entrepreneurs, and it's not for everybody, they go out and do it, draw motivation from themselves. Like I don't need a commission plan, or I've never have when I was an individual contributor. Didn't need a commission plan, didn't need somebody to say, hey, let's try better. You can get a president's club. No, if I'm in this, putting my name on this product and selling this service, like I'm going to motivate myself to be the best that I can. And quite frankly, I'm competitive. I want to be better than everybody else.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So I don't know how you can get there. And I don't know if it's just.
Well, someone asked me that the other day, like, where do you get motivation from? And I've been asked that question by newer business owners, like frequently, like, how do I stay motivated with this? My first question back to them always is, why do you need motivation?
Yeah.
Like, isn't it already burning? Because I don't know anything else.
Yeah.
Like we're the same in that way. If it's, I want to be the best at whatever, if I'm on the basketball court, if I'm playing in the business world, like wherever it is, that burning desire is there. If someone's asking that question though, some of the things I always tell them is that you can get motivation from a lot of different places, but the best way to be motivated and to stay motivated is to have momentum and to know that I started back there and I'm taking a step forward and I'm going over there and I see how far I came from and that I'm getting closer to that goal that's there, and having that momentum helps. And I tell those people, take small steps.
Yeah.
Like to keep that momentum. Like don't try to bite off too much and jump too far ahead, because in this entrepreneurship game, like the small wins are the ones that matter. You know?
And I suck at what you just said. I suck at looking back, and I suck at celebrating wins. To me, I don't know. I just, it never feels enough, right? There's always something else where I really struggle to look back and say, look where you came from, and you should be really proud of that. I'm like, well, that's in the past. Like I'm not celebrating past success, or, okay, well now we just did X, Y, Z. Like we're set for this quarter. Well, then how's the next quarter looking? The quarter after that, and then what's the valuation of the company long term? The stop and smell the roses part, and to look back and celebrate success is something I am still horrible at, and I challenge myself to actually sit down and appreciate it, because some people are really good at it, and it's not me.
I don't know how much of it is intrinsic inside someone or how much they learn to do it. There's a great book called The Gap and the Gain by Dan Sullivan. Okay. It's a great read. Recommend it to anyone. The concept of it is, if you're trying to live a life that is full of fulfillment and happiness, what you focus on is what's going to drive that level of fulfillment and happiness. Now, I've said on this podcast before, I don't believe in happiness. I do believe in fulfillment. So when it comes to fulfillment, if you're only focusing on what you don't have, which is that sales mindset of what's happening next quarter, or if the company's not worth $1 billion yet, like we're so far away from that, you're going to end up being unfulfilled and feel like you're not going anywhere fast.
Yeah.
But the moment you turn back around and say, okay, let me focus instead of on the gap, but on the gain of look where I came from.
Yeah.
And this is true in a lot of areas of life, like with your kids, like look what we've accomplished so far. Instead of looking at all the stuff you don't have, you can feel extremely fulfilled and have a gratitude exercise just of what you've done for yourself by focusing on the gain instead of on that gap that's in front of you. I love that book for that concept, but it's something that everyone struggles with, myself included. And I've had to remind myself after reading that book, all right, focus on the gain. Like, don't focus on the gap.
What does that focus on the gain look like to you? Like, how do you do that?
I think you have to, it's for some people that struggle with it, the way that I would focus on it is, let's say you're in a business and the business just feels like you just absolutely struggling. Like you wanted to build $1 billion company, the business is diet at $10 million, and you just feel like you're overwhelmed by it, and you're hiring employees and they're not working out. And if you stop and say, what was this business like on day one? Because what I know about every business is that on day one, all you had was questions and no answers. how are we setting this thing up? Do we need to have a bank account? Like, where's the first customer coming from? Like, we don't have anything. When you start to think back to, oh, where everyone else is at is where I was on day one, where it was all questions, no answers, and then articulate, how many answers do I have today? Oh, I have clients that pay me money. I've got signed contracts. We've got employees that bought into this vision that we have.
Yeah.
And because the employees are here, we had to refine that vision and now get everyone onto the same path, going in the same direction. That's a look back at the gain of where you're at and how well positioned you are. Because then if you ask the question of, all right, are you closer or further away from the $1 billion goal than when you started? Knowing that the first million's the hardest, the first 10 million might be the hardest, and the last like 990 million will be hard, but you've already been through the roughest part to get started. That's, I think, a focus on the gain versus the gap.
So that's another question I have for you. If you, in this scenario, the $1 billion your goal, well, let's say you get to 500 million. Are you the type of person that says, well, I'm halfway there? Or once you get to 500 million, you're like, well, maybe we should make that goal 2 billion. And then you're like,
yes,
well, shit, now I'm a quarter of the way there. Like, how does your brain operate when you...
It depends on how you live your life. Because if you live your life getting fulfillment from achieving the goals that you set for yourself, then I think you're in rough shape if that goalpost moves. But if you garner your fulfillment in life from having momentum moving towards the goals and fall in love with the process of going after your goals, I love to have the goalpost move. I famously told, famous in my own mind, one of my friends when I was 25, I'm on a 10-year, $10 million plan.
Okay.
Like, that's where I'm going. And he goes, dude, you don't even have a business. Like, you have nothing going on. You can't be on, you can't earn your way to that. Like, you have to have other stuff going on. I go, I know. And I positioned myself to be on a 10-year, $10 million plan, right? Yeah. The funny thing is that when I achieved that, it was long before the 10-year mark to make it happen. I thought to myself, like, man, what if I had said 10 years, 100 million? I would have had to position much differently because what gets you to 10, there's many paths. There's few paths to 100 million.
Yeah.
That you have to be on a different track and trajectory. Well, what if I put myself there instead? You start to fight against your own potential. Anyone who moves the goalpost forward realizes that, oh, my potential is like way more than this. I didn't want enough. And so I asked those people who are talking about a goalpost moving, like, why are you moving it? Is it because like you realize you can do more? Because that's a pretty moral reason to move the goal.
Yeah.
Some people say, well, you got to know when to quit. Like, where do you fall on that spectrum of goalpost moving versus achieving it and then just retiring at 39, because you made $100 million?
So it's really funny you asked that. I think I could walk away.
Do you really?
I really do. Well, not like walk away and retire. Yeah. But in a sense, like eventually there's a number out there that lets me completely walk away and get to all my kids' sporting events or be present at everything, pick up, drop off at school. There is a number to get there.
What's
for me.
What's that number?
I don't have it.
Okay.
But it's not much. It's really not.
But that means that if you don't have it, that number could move.
It could move, but I don't think it will because I am so stubborn with myself that I would be disappointed in myself if I surpassed that number, whatever it is. If I surpassed it and kept going, then I'm disappointing myself because I didn't follow through with what I said. But I like your whole fulfillment and happiness thing too, because I am by nature in business a pessimist. Your brother,
I know that about you.
Your brother is an optimist, and I think that's why our business relationship is so perfect. It's like we balance each other out in such different ways. But for me, fulfillment, if we set a goal as a company, it's not done. There's no celebrating until we get there. In my mind, I find fulfillment and happiness, outside of work, and that's where I could be an optimist in my life. In that, I'm able to separate that. But in business, it's like if we're behind, we have to get there. If the goalpost moved, I feel the ownership to get to do it, and I always want to kind of provide that balance of let's plan for a worst case scenario. Yeah, let's plan for. What does rock bottom look like? So then anything else we achieve is icing on the cake. I don't like, having these lofty numbers or lofty revenue projections that we know, if certain factors come, they won't be there. It's let me know and plan for the worst case. And then I know what what the bottom looks like, and we can expand and only go up from there.
I'll tell you, I would probably push back on the idea that you've got a number in mind, that when you hit that number, you would end up being done, because that only applies to people when the number is small. I'll tell you what I mean by that. Let's say your number is 3 million.
Okay.
Which is a very average retirement plan goal for the average American, to have $2-3 million saved up. When you hit that, we do see most people like ring the register. I retired by 50, I had my $3 million saved up, the life I want to live. Okay, when the goal is small, people hit it and they like ring the register. When the goal is larger, I just don't think there are very many examples of people who are out there who had a goal to hit 100 million and then they achieved it, and you see that person Mai Tai at the beach, just being with their kids, just like, oh, I'm just going to be an investor now. Like you see elements of it, but them as an investor, or they're working harder than most people work.
Yeah, exactly.
Like in their day job, you know?
So that is absolutely correct.
Let's dive in and talk about this empathy piece again.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned this earlier, having been on the bad side of an employer-employee relationship and knowing what that feels like, that you treat people differently because of that. That's something that every employer needs to hear about and understand your why behind that, and how to get into the shoes of people that they're dealing with. When you have bad news to deliver, you've got a story about getting jobs for 5 people at a Fortune 100 company, and then it didn't work out. You moved them already, and you had to go deliver that news to your employees that work for you, that you made promises to, and figure out a solution to that. What's going on with that story?
Yeah, I mean, we can elaborate on the scenario too. Those were 5 of the first people we've ever deployed.
So this is like brand new company.
This is brand new company.
You've hired them out of college. You've trained them up.
Exactly.
And you're like selling them on why they picked you over another boot camp staffing company.
And the first projections we put on paper for the amount of money we'd already have, 6 months in, and we had 0.
Yeah.
Right. So we're already struggling. Money's going out. Money's not coming in. We finally get the agreement for these people to go on board. We pay them to train. We relocate them after they've interviewed. They're going on site. We're waiting for start dates. And then the manager got pulled from the project. So
this is the manager of the company that was going to hire them on.
Yeah. So the person who committed to it, they put a new manager in charge, and that manager says, that's not the direction I'm going. So can you imagine the conversations I'm having, the scrambling I'm doing to try to say, hey, you're a Fortune 100 company. Like, can you find places for them, please?
Yeah. Because you've got 5 people that are expecting to get a job at this company.
They already had like the word that they had the job. They'd moved. We relocated them to Jersey City.
So
they were all over the country.
Walk me through the moment you got this news that the manager was gone and the deal is off. What are you feeling?
It's the pit in that
stomach. Moment.
It's the pit in the stomach. And I do business very emotionally, right? That's how I read a lot of situations. I take it harder than most. Like hearing that, it immediately went to like, what do we do? And it was panic. It's some of it's disbelief too.
Yeah.
Like, no, but you said.
Yeah.
And they're like, well,
you can't do this to me, right?
Yeah. We're a Fortune 100 financial service company. You're who? They were probably pronouncing HTD Talent with different acronyms, or HTD Talent, right? So that I'm trying to, essentially tell them exactly what happened. Hopefully they see the empathy in that and find a way.
Yeah.
A lot of people in that company were on our side trying to help, but the manager just went my way to the highway and pulled it. So
what do they say when you're like, I got people that moved here for this job? Are they just at the mindset that like, hey, in our company that happens every day, we've got tens of thousands of employees.
When you're at a company that size, there's numbers on spreadsheets, right?
Yeah.
I have to move that around, potentially this is 5 people in what could have been 100-person, 150-person reorganization. It's like, well, yeah, that's the least of my concern right now. Those people haven't even started work yet, so that's the easiest way for them. So there's not like a ton of blame to go around, or like I don't hold any ill will. I don't hold that much ill will.
Yeah.
But it is something to me where when it happens to your people and people who believed in what you are doing.
Yeah.
They could have gone to our competitors. They could have tried to go other places. They believed in us enough to do that, and we got them the job. We thought it was as good to go. When that happens, you immediately just feel for these people. And
yeah.
There's some embarrassment too, right?
Yeah.
Like I put my reputation on the line. Now I have to go and tell these people that I don't know what's going to happen to you.
How did you handle those conversations, and when did you handle those conversations?
As soon as I knew that it wasn't going to be solved, they knew 5 minutes later. And I probably should have prepped and prepared more and delivered kind of a scripted message, but I couldn't.
Well, should you? I mean, most employers would wait and then exhaust every avenue before telling them and send an email. Like, hey, sorry, your job's gone.
No, it was personal phone calls.
Yeah.
Personal phone calls. Here's the situation. Here's what I'm trying to do. Here's the percentages I would put at it right now, but you have my word, I'm not sleeping for the next 3 days. Everything else is on the back burner so I can try to make this happen. And I did. I tried everything I could, but guess what? Didn't happen. I couldn't move mountains. That company's still not a client of ours, which is super frustrating. Good thing we had other people to pick up the pieces, but most of those people stuck by us. Most of those people, they were angry. They were upset. They had every right to be angry, right? They uprooted their lives, but we found a way a few months later to get them to a brand new client that came, and we got most of them jobs. 4 out of the 5, I believe, took jobs. And the fact that they trusted us during that, it was incredible. It almost felt better deploying them to that company in that location because they stuck by us when they shouldn't have.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, I would have, if I were in their position, I probably would have taken that spiteful moment and used it to go somewhere else and, do everything I could to screw
They'll be on a podcast one day talking about that as their reflection.
Yeah.
What do you say to employers that have bad news to deliver about how they should be looking at that situation in terms of promptness of communicating to their employees so that everyone's in the loop of knowing what's going on?
Yeah, the transparency, as much as you can deliver, is what I believe in, right? I know there's a lot of circumstances where you can't say anything, or that unless something's certain, you can't deliver news. But in every case, that's a core pillar of mine is if I have information that affects your career, right, I'm going to do everything I can behind the scenes to make it right. But if not, you're going to know it as soon as I'm allowed to, or as soon as we can actually tell you what to do.
Yeah, sure.
What's going on?
Well, I know that's appreciated. There's an old saying, bad news doesn't get better with time.
Exactly.
Exactly. And how many employees are out there that get bad news? And the first question you have is, when did you know about this? You know, it's kind of like that question, the girlfriend gets cheated on. And the first question back to the guy is like, well, how long has this been going on for? Not like, why would you do it, you terrible person? Like, how long has this been going on for? The employee mindset is, how long have you known about my life, my kids, my future in the situation, and you didn't say anything to me?
I've always been lucky enough to work at smaller companies in the grand scheme of things. I don't think I'll ever work at a big company, right? So I haven't had to deal with huge HR departments and things like that.
Where their hands are tied
and there's a bunch of legal things that have to get signed off on. We have that, at a smaller scale, but information is typically, given back and forth quicker where you can not hold on to news for that long. So I've always been lucky enough to be able to do that. If I worked at a large company and known for 6 months that this is happening, I don't know if I could handle that. I would feel the burden on it to kind of let them know. But the empathy is I think what makes me successful in what I do. And it's not just empathy for the people who work for me. It's going out and selling to my clients, right? I develop personal relationships and get to know these people that they put their trust in using an HTD Talent, a small company in the grand scheme of things who is a partner to the biggest companies in the world. They put their trust in me, and that empathy is I start to own their problems, right? What are their pain points at work?
Yeah.
How can I help solve them? And I kind of take that on as my own, right? So I want to work harder for them than, or not harder, but I work equally as hard to make them look good. That I feel that ownership of their problem, not just what's going on in my company. So it's not easy because it does weigh on me a ton that I have my own company's problems and the people who trust me's problems. but it's what drives me. But it does
that customer obsession.
Yeah.
You get founders that have, I think, two main wavelengths. There's the customer obsession, and then there's the problem obsession. The problem solved by the product that the founder literally can't sleep because they're thinking about that problem. But then the customer obsession is where the source of the problem, so if you know that customer, you can always find that problem. I think that's why you get 2-3 people starting a company. You need someone who's just focused only on the customer, a person focused only on the actual product in order to get a company that actually survives. I want to shift real quick and talk about the early days of your entrepreneurial journey because people think entrepreneurship and just owning a business. I don't care. I define entrepreneurship versus business ownership. If all you've done is just made a job for yourself, you're a business owner. If you're making an environment for other people to build in a vision, now you're an entrepreneur. I would say that when you were running the gym, you were a business owner. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you walk through this mindset of being a business owner, owning and operating a gym. What do people think being a business owner actually is versus what you found out? What were your presuppositions about that?
It was a slap in the face. The reality hit. So to back up a little bit, I was an intern in college for a big gym owner in Washington, D.C. And I guess I did great work for him because a year after I graduated, he called me and says, hey, I want to start this new concept, small group exercise, personal training studios, similar to like what Barry's Boot Camp became, something like that. But get out of big box gym, move into this. And he's like, he was a young guy starting a family. His wife was from Costa Rica, so they'd be spending a lot of time there. He's like, I want to give you a portion of the business. I want you to help run it for me. And I'm like, man, this guy trusts a 23-year-old idiot.
From intern to owner all of a sudden.
And I'm like, he wants me to be the boss. And I'm like, I could be the boss. I've worked at ice cream stores, Chick-fil-A.
I'm ready.
I could totally do this. And then I get there, and then we open up, and we have the budget and all the people, and I'm like, man, we need to hire people. I'm like, well, where's that money coming from? I'm like, oh. So I'm assuming you're going in, and you're like, well, who cleans the bathroom at the gym? That shower's dirty. There's been a lot of people using that shower. The towels are stacking up from all the sweat rags, and you're like, oh yeah, that's me.
That's me.
So you get slapped in the face with reality really quick, becoming a business owner. All the things that if you've worked at a bigger company, people have roles, and you just have to do it all. Who builds the website? Shout out Squarespace. It took me 40 hours to do a drag and drop website that was complete shit. And somebody had to come in and redo it eventually. But that entrepreneurship, you go in thinking you're going to have people to boss around and say, here's what you're going to do. Here's what you're going to do. But really you have to earn the right to do that.
Yeah.
You have to make enough money and prove the concept and develop the vision of what this is going to be. And then you hire one person, and that one person might be part-time. And then you hire 2 people, or you start, bringing outsourcing different things to different people. But you really have to earn that right to actually be what you think a boss is. Yeah. It was a great learning
And you find out real
experience.
quick, I mean, we all have this idea in our mind of the entrepreneurs that we know. So everyone thinks about Elon Musk, and even someone that came up when the employees saw like a Tim Cook, say, well, I know Tim Cook's not cleaning bathrooms. He's out there directing, he's vision, he's guidance. This is what we're going to do. And that's all fine when you're in a company that you can go out and raise funds to go and get people that are qualified to do jobs to come in. Bootstrapping a company is a very different thing.
Absolutely.
I have to have money to pay someone so I can hire them. That means, okay, I'm doing all of it.
I wonder if Tim Cook ever did clean bathrooms in his young years.
Someone should find out if that was his story. I'd like to know if Elon Musk was cleaning bathrooms at PayPal.
Could be. I'm sure they're listening to this podcast.
Yeah. If they're not, they're missing out.
Yeah.
So come here. But I do think that we talk about this frequently, the perception versus the reality of what it's going to be like to own a business. it's something that, classically speaking, most people would say that they want to do. They say, I want to own my own time. I want to work for myself.
Yeah.
I don't know that all those things mean, I want to go be a business owner, but you realize how much goes into it, because it starts getting into that ideal and talking through like, well, who deserves to get paid what in a business? And, should Elon Musk have $50 billion of stock options in Tesla, or is that too much for him to make when he's not in there doing anything anymore?
Yeah.
People get frustrated by that about the wealth creation, but who's taking the risk? And as a business owner, who's putting themselves in a situation that like, yep, I am the one doing everything at first. Mm-hmm. And then as I can afford to hire people on, now I'm creating an opportunity for someone else to come in and be employed by this. But it's a tough question because people don't know.
Well, I would argue that most people would hate and should hate being a business owner and entrepreneur.
Do you hate? Are there elements of entrepreneurship that you don't like?
Every day, every single day. Like there's things that I'm not like amazing at that I want to be amazing at and I should be amazing at. Like in my head, I want to be the best. It's something that entrepreneurship is great, but it's lonely. It's lonely. You can never shut off. There's really not a clear line of delineation between your work and your personal life, because if the whole business relies on you, right, that's how you're trying to pay for your family. That's how you're trying to keep a roof over your head. Yeah. So it's very lonely. It's very stressful. You stay up at night thinking how to solve problems and how to, carry that empathy I was talking about for your customers. It's not for everybody. Yeah. And I would argue for some people, it'd be too much to handle. Yeah. And for me, I'll be very honest. Some days it is too much to handle. You're like,
I think everyone has those days.
Yeah.
Where it's like, man, this is a lot. Especially when times aren't great. There's the saying that there's no problem that more sales can't solve. So when you're in a sales boom, like living on top of the mountain, top of the hill, but most of the time you're not going to be in a sales boom.
Yeah.
And so you do have these problems that sales would have solved, but you're dealing with them as a leader in the business. You don't get to act in front of your employees like everything's not okay. Like you have to give job security when you're wondering, are we going to be around like 4 months from now?
I think it's called the swan theory. If you see a swan on the water, they always move so gracefully, and they're just, no matter what's going on, they're sitting there looking so peaceful. But under the water, what you can't see is the swan just going absolutely crazy, kicking to stay afloat for certain things. And it's like, that's how you have to present in troubling times, like to the company, right? We're a steady ship. We're going through, and underwater, it's fighting fires every single day. There's something going on, right? Where you have to solve, and you have to maintain that leadership.
If I can sum up some of the things we talked about today that I think separate you from the average business owner, that empathy piece is huge, and most people don't have it. They would say that they're self-aware and that they have a social awareness of others. Maybe yours is different because you sat in that role and you've had good employers that believed in you on the gym side, and then you've had ones that like really screwed you over, that forced you to make these big changes. I love that whole idea of region beta paradox. I've never had that conversation with someone yet about life just has to be hard enough to force you to change, to go through this. And I appreciate you sharing the insights with us today. Excited to see how this journey continues for HTD Talent as you guys press on in the future. I do believe you'll be $1 billion company one day. So stop saying 20 million, because I'm an investor in this company. I need it to be bigger than that. Bigger.
That was the personal.
Thanks for coming on, Chris.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.